Dear Honorable Ministers, it is an honor for me to moderate this high-level roundtable with you to mark the launch of the 2023 Global Education Monitoring Report on Technology in Education. The launch marks a key milestone. Our world requires now, more than ever, recommendations that are based on evidence on how to use technology across education systems. Our invitation today is to discuss together the use of technology and learning for all children and all learners in Africa. Children in Africa are lagging behind in terms of learning outcomes. We know that at most 1 in 5 children of primary school age achieve minimum proficiency in reading and mathematics. But every part of the world has a major outstanding education problem to deal with. And every region, education systems around the world have often turned to technology to try to solve the most pressing issues in education. But as this year's GEM report correctly reminds us, we need to first ask ourselves what education systems we want before we turn to technology as a solution. The report provides strong arguments around the trade-offs that are inherent in the choices we need to make about the use of technology in education. And it is important that we look carefully at these trade-offs. I'm happy that we are joined today by Honorary Minister of Education and Skills of Botswana, Mr. Douglas Letsolatebe, Honorable Minister of State of Primary and Secondary Education of Rwanda, Mr. Gaspar Twagirayezu, and Honorable Minister of Education of Zambia, Mr. Douglas Siakalima. I will invite them to share with us their own country experiences in response to this specific common question for all of them. How can we promote digital education policies and programs in Africa that are based on evidence, that do not leave the most marginalized learners behind, and that can have a real impact on learning outcomes? Our honorable ministers from Latin America have already reflected upon this same question. So together through this South-to-South dialogue, we hope to be able to shed some light to the discussion around the use of technology in education with reference to Africa, using the recommendations of the 2023 GEM report as guidance. With this brief introduction, let me pass the floor to Honorable Minister Douglas Letsolatebe of Botswana to share with us his thoughts. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our experience in Botswana in the space of technology. Indeed, to teach or for learning to take place, we need to have the right curriculum. We need to have the good pedagogy to present that curriculum and good assessment. Now, I will concentrate mostly on the pedagogy. That's where we have used a technology to improve our teaching or learning in schools. We have looked at the way we teach students, and we have realized that most of the students right now are not interested in the old way in which we teach. So we have embraced ICT in teaching and learning. And so we made sure that we concentrate on 3 or 4 major points to make sure that learning takes place effectively. Remember, our assignment is to make sure that we do not leave anyone behind. And with ICT being brought in pedagogy, could leave other people behind. So one of the first important things we made sure that we concentrated on is the issue of connectivity. Do we have the right connectivity, internet, the right speed for everybody all over the country? And this is one of the major important things we looked at. And we are right now spreading out all over the country, connecting schools with the internet. And not only schools, we have where people gather to discuss village issues known as kotlas. We are also connecting those to internet so that students, when they are maybe over the weekend when they are not at school, they could go by next to their kotla and connect to internet. And the next thing is issues to access to the devices themselves. You can have the internet. If you do not have the devices, you may not have, you cannot connect. So we are giving out ICT gadgets to all schools. We have started off the senior secondary schools. We now move into junior secondary schools, and we'll be moving to primary schools next year. We are really careful. We know students need to learn other motor skills. So we will be careful as we go lower than in lower primary. We'll be giving them gadgets and sometimes collecting them. The other important component we are concentrating on is what we put in those gadgets, the content. Have the kids have access to the right content? So we are retooling and upskilling our teachers so that they should be ready to train a 21st century learner. The 21st century learner needs to be trained to find the content out there in the wide web. Not only that, we have retooled and trained them to develop their content so that they can be able to give it to their students. And we are also, because politicians, we looked at the policies to come out with conducive policies to protect kids against cyber crimes and others, so that the students do not end up exposing them to a lot of danger. So we are embracing technology, especially on the part of the pedagogy in assessment. We'll have some time to touch on that, but we are using ICT to improve the quality of our education in Botswana.
Thank you, Minister, for touching upon a broad range of really extremely relevant issues, and I'm happy that we'll have a chance to also come back to some additional activities that you have been carrying out. Let me turn to Honorable Minister Twagirayezu. Rwanda, which also features quite extensively in the GEM report this year, has had quite a long experience of trying to embed technology in education. Please share with us your main reflections on the experience of implementing these policies.
Thank you very much, Manos, and thank you, colleagues, for giving us an opportunity to share with you all the experience of Rwanda to leverage ICT to improve learning outcomes for our children. So, but before I do that, I would want to quickly reflect on the opportunity that the GM report is presenting to us to rethink the use of technology in education systems and at the lenses of relevance, equity, scalability, and sustainability. But also at the same time, remembering that these digital technologies are not coming to replace the human interaction, but rather we are aiming at enhancing this interaction in our education systems. In Rwanda, we are also thankful that we have been looked at in this report, and we're presented as one of the case studies in Africa. So, but allow me to draw on 5 key elements that we have prioritized as a country. And number one is the digitization of the education system. What we have done is to build systems that streamline all the workflows in our education systems value chain. We have digitized information systems from the classroom levels up to the national levels. We have also worked on different systems to allow us to increase efficiency in hiring teachers, in managing them, but also to look at how they are trained and how they are promoted. We have also, of course, been working on different systems to ensure that assessments in our classrooms are done efficiently and to ensure that the data coming from those systems can inform our policies on a national level. Of course, in addition to digitalization of the education system itself, we have also invested in building content that's aligned with the curriculum, but also content that that is integrated in the teaching and learning processes. And we have been providing access to our children of digital textbooks to ensure that our students and our teachers can access those resources online. Of course, we have also been emphasizing on infrastructure development, where most of our schools have access to digital devices, be it computers, tablets. But we have also been investing a lot in network, because you can have content and devices, but you also need all our schools to be connected. And I also want to highlight that we are also beginning to build a dedicated network for our education system. And this is a network that's going to connect schools and research institutions across the country. But of course, we have also been observing, of course, disparities across our education system, and we see this in terms of access to devices and access to the resources, of course, given where the schools are located. But of course, we are working on increasing the pool of technologies that we use to connect all these schools to ensure that most of our schools have access to internet resources, but also devices. We have also built policies to ensure that as we avail online resources, we need to also ensure that they are safe for our kids to access. So this is why we have developed a child online protection policy and a data privacy policy. And this is to ensure that our kids and our teachers can access these resources online, while we also protect their safety and their privacy. But of course, when we try to expand that experience, talk about Africa in general, I think we also need to look at access of devices, because these devices are getting expensive, and this prevents us from scaling those solutions. And this is why I believe that as African educators, we should also be looking at how do we pull our purchasing capacity so that we can have a greater bargaining power when we are discussing about procurement of these devices as they get more and more expensive, and our systems of education keep growing as we get to admit more children, as we also improve our efficiency. So I think this is very important, and I would want to invite all our colleagues here to actually consider working together on a continent to ensure that our children can have better access to those devices. I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. This is like music to my ears, because it's true. There are not that many areas of activity that countries can work together. They can learn from each other, but there are a few practical ways of collaboration, and I think the one you suggested sounds very, very promising. Let me now invite Minister Siyakalima, who has also a really very ambitious vision for the education system of his country. I was pleased to listen to him last November, but I was in the context of a summit or a conference on technology in education. So it would be very interesting to hear how you envisage the incorporation of technology in your ambitious education vision. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Manos. Nice to see you once again. And good afternoon, my friend Botswana. And good afternoon, my colleague from Rwanda. Yes, the use of technology in schools is quite important for us, we believe. And I always say this, we missed the agrarian revolution first, then we missed the industrial revolution, then we shouldn't miss the technological revolution which is coming. And to leverage it with what we are doing in schools, I must confess that we have not gone wider the way Rwanda has done it. And I'm glad that my colleague was saying that we need now to start working together. We can learn from one another, but we can still work together, like my friend from Rwanda gave an example. How do we leverage in order for us to get these devices? It shouldn't be too expensive for us. I know quite all right ourselves, my government has increased the share of GDP in terms of putting resources into education. So, and most of it, we are trying now to deal with the technological world. We have already done the national ICT policy, which we are also now building other laws. We have already an act which protects the child. So within our ICT policy, there is a bigger law which protects the child, every child. We also have just passed a few laws on cyber, especially on cyber crime, in order for our children not to really to go into something and then some people start tampering with them. One issue that we have not done a lot is actually in rural Zambia, because internet is quite slow that side. And what we are trying to do is, because we are using our hydroelectricity in order for us to get electricity, in order to get connected. But thank heaven we have now a solar system, so it is working well for us. We are also trying to get e-libraries so that our kids do not need to go physically into a library to go and read. They can read online with those protections that we have already. One thing probably that has made us learn a lesson now is COVID-19. COVID-19 taught us a lot of lessons on how important technology is. Because at that time, we were shuttering schools. Although we were not certainly affected as Africa, we should never ever think that something will not come which will disturb our kids and therefore the loss in learning. So ourselves, COVID really made us a point to say that ICTs, of course, like my colleague was saying, they will not replace a human or a human being, but it will help us in terms of so many things, in terms of learning, catching up, trying to learn at home. When there is a calamity, you still have to learn. Many of our universities now are online. Even when the kids are off school, they write assessments. I mean, they write their reports, and then they are sent online, and the teachers interact with them. So although we need still to do so much, but I think that we are on the right trajectory, because every year, like myself, I'm receiving quite a bigger portion of the GDP in terms of budget. I think I can stop for now then.
Thank you, Minister Sekalima. I think I would like to give you the floor a second time, because we do have a little bit of time left to reflect on the question, because you all agreed that we need to put learners at the center. And the campaign behind this report is education technology on our terms. So I'd like you to reflect on that question. What does it mean for you to say that from your position you can help set the table? We had an example from Minister Twagirayezu on working together to set the terms, the cost terms, which can be expensive. But before I give the floor back to you, just a summary. Your interventions were really excellent, because you have touched upon all of the diverse issues that the GEM report is touching. We talked about the opportunities that technology is giving us to reach disadvantaged groups. You mentioned remote libraries, for instance, in Zambia. You talked about content, the opportunity to put so much content preferably aligned to the curriculum to achieve our learning objectives. You talked about the use to develop skills to navigate the digital world. Of course, not everyone is exposed to it at the same time, but things are changing very fast, and you're taking the precautions. You talk about the use of data and technology for education management through, I think, all sorts of examples, even in hiring and recruiting and managing teachers, for instance, in Rwanda. You talked about the challenges of connectivity in Botswana. You talked about the need to set devices, share them widely, but also make sure that they're both equitably distributed and appropriate, because maybe younger children need not be as much exposed to devices as older children. You talked about the need to protect them, and you also talked about the need to support teachers, a major condition for anything in technology and education to succeed. So thank you very much for these broad-ranging interventions. Let me get back to you in the same order and ask you a very brief reflection on what does it mean for you as a Minister of Education to set the terms on how technology is used for the best interests of learners. Minister Letsola Tebe.
I can reflect on now, it's what I've learned, the challenges I've learned as we try to roll out ICT in schools. Like colleagues have said it, the issue of research centers and education networks coming together to make sure that data is affordable. That's one of the things we really want to look into, to make sure that we discuss with others to find out how we can spread it out to other, not only research centers and going down to basic education. Usually the research and education networks is concentrating on universities and research centers. We need to go all the way to involve everybody. The other thing is the issue of availability, the issue of open source, open data. We need to have that. Everybody should have access to data, to whatever is put up into the internet without hindrance of paying. This is one of the things which I really think we need to work around.
Thank you for joining today. Minister Twagirayezu.
All right, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity again. I think the quickest thing I can think of right now is to put in place the right policy frameworks. And this is to ensure that we are not scattered as we try to implement digital solutions in our schools. Because fortunately, we are now getting more and more private sector getting involved in developing content, developing solutions. But sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where there is no framework for us to tap into those resources in a more efficient way. And this results into one education system with 100 solutions, different types of content. So I think we need to figure out a way to build proper policy frameworks that can even guide the private sector on how it can integrate in our education system. And this is, again, to ensure that we have the appropriate content, but also to ensure that most of our kids are reached, that these solutions are not too expensive, or to make sure that these solutions are not too fragmented. So I think that policy framework on a country level, but also learning from each other on the continent, I think it will be useful.
Thank you very much for that. And maybe the African Union Year of Education gives us an opportunity to also reflect on that question next year, year 2024. Minister Siakalima.
Yes, thank you again for the opportunity. Yeah, what we're trying to do also now, because as we roll out technology to many schools, we also appreciate that not all the teachers are tuned to technology. So we want to do a fast pace to train up more than 100,000 teachers, so that as we roll out, especially in rural areas, they must go and do something that is they are managing. Because sometimes you can have a teacher who a pupil knows better than a teacher. Okay, so we must scale up, and this is what we are trying to do now. And for your own information, our recruitment of last year, the 30,496, many people say, how did you make it? We used actual technology to do that. We rolled out in all the districts, 116 districts. So technology helped us. We just programmed. If you're a teacher, you have applied, if you have a certificate, the grade that you have, the DBAS would refuse. You are not accepted. You are not accepted. You are not accepted, because it was inbuilt. So it was a fair way of doing it, because in all the districts we did the same. And many people were actually very shocked that sometimes whenever they were recruiting teachers, Even if it was by 5,000, it was problematic. By this time around, every teacher who was recruited, they know that they didn't need to go and, if you like, give something in order for them to be recruited. We just did that, and everybody was shocked to say that, how did you make it? They said, no, we programmed it so that everybody has equal chance of being a teacher. So when we do that, as we roll out with the teachers now, they will know that this thing works. So I think that was a plus which we had ourselves. You can imagine 30,496. If they were done manually, you can have somebody, he failed this subject, but he's going to teach. So we are saying that anybody who, even if they have a certificate, but if they did not pass English, for example, or mathematics, how are they going to teach mathematics at grade 5? So we programmed it that way that if you have failed this, automatically it will remove you. So there was very little human element inside there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to have you in this panel, bringing the reflections of Africa to the global launch. I think you raised very important questions. You reminded that education has many challenges, but technology can be a tool, and that's a key. But a tool that has to be on our terms. And I think in your different ways, you elaborate that on the terms of the government, what suits the government, on the terms of the learner, and on the terms of the teacher, because if the teachers are also not brought on board, how is it possible? And I think we all hope to see that the learners get ahead of the teachers in everything, not just in their knowledge of technology, but in all their skills and capabilities to see a better future for our countries. Thank you so much for joining the global launch of the 2023 GEM report.